Breaking news, the world has gotten fatter. Story at 11. Once we replaced natural fats with cheap manufactured carbs and seed oils, it was only a matter of time. Now that people no longer are scared of healthy fats and are ready to introduce more into their diets, people are starting to wonder, can you really lose weight while on keto? Can you build and maintain muscle while on keto? Yeah, that's right. It's time to talk about the scary keto people. And I might as well come clean. I'm a keto person too. Well, a modified keto person. Stick with me for a couple of minutes and I'll share my experience being keto, fasting on a daily basis, and my new love for high protein diets. Maybe my journey will inspire you to incorporate some of these feeding protocols. Keto has been a hot diet trend for a while. You know, keto is in the zeitgeist when you see Kraft mac and cheese being pushed as keto friendly. Manufactured food packaging is a lagging indicator, however, and once Mondelez pastes it on a box, you know it's peaked. But just because it was a fad doesn't mean there aren't benefits still to be had. Madison Avenue loves to bastardize a diet, water down its meaning, and slap a logo on it. Since keto isn't trademarked, food manufacturers can make it mean whatever they want. Diet trends often find footing in the bodybuilding world. Most bodybuilders have already maximized the easy gains from working out, so they look for anything that can give them an edge on stage, be that a supplement that hasn't been outlawed yet, or a new approach to eating and counting macronutrients that will help them stay shredded. And while I don't know anyone personally who's pursuing 3% body fat or potential liver and kidney damage or heart attacks, the fact is people are competitive. Once they see that restricting carbs and upping fats works for someone flexing on stage, they figure it will help them look great on the beach. The ketogenic diet has been around forever. Initially written down and prescribed by neurologists in the 1930s to treat epilepsy, people have been shoving butter sticks into their mouths for decades because of one of keto's side effects: weight loss. Before I knew that keto has a history dating back to ancient Greece, I knew it as the Atkins diet. It was big in the 70s, but was highly controversial. But then it came back to prominence in the 90s. It just called itself the South Beach diet. So, even if this current version of keto is now on the way out, just hold on for another few years. Someone will rediscover it, call it something different, like the whole whale infusion, and a new trend in diet books and manufactured foods will swim its way into our lives. The first time I was old enough to understand what keto was, I thought it was crap. It was the early 2000s, and Dr. Atkins had just died by falling on the ice outside his New York townhouse. We anti-Atkins folk interpreted this not as divine intervention, but divine justice. This is what happens, we rationalized, when you cut out the carbs. It's amazing how dangerous a little bit of knowledge mixed with an agenda can be. Cut to 13 years later, and I'm counting macros, making sure my carbs come in under 50 grams, rationalizing that fiber doesn't count as a real carb, therefore I can eat an extra 10 dark chocolate Ghirardelli chips while drizzling extra virgin olive oil on top. Sound nasty? I can tell you it's not. It's definitely not. It starts with intermittent fasting, or IF. Another dieting practice we can thank the bodybuilding world for. It has some real metabolic, gut health, and potential longevity benefits that are starting to be verified by scientific research. In fact, IF is one of the primary protocols in treating cancer, but that's another video. Over 10 years ago, I started incorporating feeding windows into my diet. Basically, I would fast for the majority of the day, confining my caloric consumption to just a few hours. 16-8 is a popular split. 16 hours fasting and 8 hours eating. Back then, it was a cutting-edge practice that was supposed to help people gain muscle without excessive body fat. While my body fat percentage would eventually drop, it was the other benefits that kept me following this practice. It helped me stabilize blood sugar and moderate my energy levels. And honestly, it saved me tons of time. When you're trying to eat clean, making meals becomes a major time suck. And I found I was more productive without having to experience the jarring ups and downs and brain fog that inevitably followed my eating meals throughout the day. In other words, I felt great. So I started to build upon my success. My feeding window shrank as my fasting time increased. Soon there were multi-day water-only fasts. Now, these weren't done for weight maintenance, but sometimes that was a side effect. I was doing it for the neurological benefits, the gut health, and for rebuilding my immune system. As a result, I've been doing IF for over 10 years now. Once, when preparing for a 4-day water-only fast, I found a podcast with Dr. Peter Attia. He's a physician who's an expert in longevity, who mentioned that fasts were much easier if he went into a state of ketosis first. So I dug into the purported benefits of a ketogenic diet and decided to follow it. Now, somehow his description didn't sound like a diet fad. Atkins South Beach had a new accolade. And for me, it wasn't much of a social problem to follow it since my wife got into it as well. Of course, she wasn't nearly as militant as I was. She was more of a government contractor, whereas I was special forces. She became a great ally, coming up with all sorts of recipes to replace our carb-heavy loves. Today, I'm what they call metabolically flexible. I can easily step into and out of ketosis to either burn fat or carbs for energy. Now, if you're assuming that humans have always been able to burn both fuel sources, you're right, but probably not the way you think. Certainly not if they are SAD or following the standard American diet. The reason people on the standard American diet get hungry so often is because the body burns sugar first. It's a premium energy. But when deprived of sugar, say more than 16 hours, the body adapts. It burns fat for energy. This is why so many people are frustrated with their calorie-restricted diets. Their bodies and brains crave sugar. And because sugar is the cornerstone of SAD, they constantly consume more once a hunger cue occurs. It's a vicious downward spiral. When there's too much sugar for the body to burn, it stores that extra energy as triglycerides, a fatty acid in the bloodstream. And then those fatty acids get stored in the body as fat tissue. To access fat as the primary energy source, the body has to deplete its stores of glucose or blood sugar. That usually takes around 16 hours. But depending on the individual, it could take up to 24 or even more hours. Most bodies on the standard American diet are like poorly engineered Priuses. They burn gasoline first, rarely if ever switching over to the battery, because they're constantly refilling their fuel tanks. In this case, sugar. Now, a keto diet removes almost all carbs, forcing our body to learn to prioritize burning fat. One problem a lot of keto adherents run into, though, is they don't eat less calories than they need. They never create that caloric deficit that is fundamental for weight loss. So the only fat they end up burning is the fat that they're consuming. They need to reduce the calories they eat so they can begin to burn their stored body fat. Since fat is a calorically heavy macronutrient, it's easy to overconsume, especially as you're trying to replace the taste of sugars. And like other calorie restriction diets, keto practitioners run the risk of losing muscle. Any caloric deficit without strength training will lead to muscle loss, especially on keto. While certain organs in your body prefer fat as an energy source, like your heart, liver, and even most brain functions, there are still some brain functions that require sugar. And to get it, the body will break apart muscle to release glycerin. That's a sugar bond between amino acids that the brain can burn. The reason a lot of adherents to intermittent fasting are keto, and a lot of keto dieters intermittent fasting, is because they work well together when it comes to metabolism. Over time, I lost more weight with IF than keto. IF allowed me to dramatically narrow my feeding window, making it easy to minimize calories. Keto, on the other hand, reduced my taste for carbs, greatly reducing my sugar cravings. My concern with following keto was muscle mass. Now, I found I could maintain lean muscle mass on keto, but found it difficult to build new muscle. And while there have been anecdotes swirling on the internet that you can build muscle while on keto, there's no scientific research supporting it. And honestly, in my experience, that has certainly been the case. Currently, I'm trying to put more muscle on before shifting back into a maintenance mode. But since I'm in my 50s and never really had a lot of muscle mass to begin with, I find that I gotta suck up the carbs and the protein. One thing researchers may now be confirming is that the consumption of protein helps prevent muscle loss even when in a caloric deficit. The new is a high protein diet. And while it's easy to dismiss the latest trend as some Kardashian influencer fad, there are serious benefits to increasing protein. Animal protein, that is. Here's a trigger warning. This is my opinion. It hasn't been vetted by social media nor industry experts. Food manufacturers love to up their offerings to high in protein status by dumping soy or grain derivatives into their boxes of sugar and salt. They're cheap and plentiful, but they aren't going to help you build and maintain muscle. And there's conjecture, granted it's on the internet, so take it for what it's worth, that soy is not great for a man's hormone profile. Ingesting a phytoestrogen might not be the best solution for your manhood. In any case, it's not going to help you stay strong, and it comes with a whole slate of other lovely additives and preservatives that no one can pronounce. Since I've moved over to a modified keto diet, I am putting consumption of animal protein as a priority. So not to get into a battle with vegetarians or vegans, but when it comes to muscle building and maintenance, you need specific amino acids that are most readily available in animal protein. You can find certain non-animal combinations, but you have to eat like 7 plates of red beans and rice, along with vitamin supplements to equal the protein and nutrients that you get in 1 8-ounce filet. Ultimately, I look at keto as a tool I can use when needed, but it's more like jujitsu than a ball-peen hammer. Both are helpful when getting mugged. Jiu-jitsu requires constant practice to keep you primed.
The phone is ringing.
Relax, I'll get it.
But a ball-peen hammer just gets confiscated by the TSA. I'm not gonna explain how I know that. But what the hell do I know? True success comes inside a healthy body and thriving mind. If I can do it, anyone can. So, if you like what you heard, press the like button. If you really liked what you heard, go ahead and subscribe. Leave a comment or two. That's what they're there for. In the meantime, check out one of these past efforts.